He is the serpent of the sea who devours nations through bitter resentment, whose coiling presence transforms human hearts into vessels of consuming jealousy that turn brother against brother and civilization against itself. But what cosmic terror birthed this Leviathan of hatred? And why does his influence strike at the very foundations of human community? This is Demonology Explained, and today we're exploring the question, who is Leviathan, and how has this monstrous entity wielded the power of envy to destroy everything humanity holds sacred? Most people think they know about sea monsters. They picture giant squids or prehistoric creatures lurking in ocean depths. But what if I told you that the most terrifying sea monster in history wasn't just a physical beast? What if it was something far worse, a creature so twisted with jealousy that it could tear apart entire civilizations from the inside? Meet Leviathan, not just any monster, the monster that ancient peoples feared more than war, famine, or plague. Because while those things could kill your body, Leviathan could destroy your soul. And here's the shocking part: he's still working today. In the beginning, when the waters of chaos churned in darkness, there lived a creature so vast and terrible that its very breath could boil the seas. Ancient texts describe something beyond imagination, a serpent so massive that its movements could shift continents. But here's what most people don't know. This wasn't originally evil. Leviathan represented the raw force of creation itself before divine order brought structure to the universe. Before God said, "Let there be light," there was chaos. Wild, uncontrolled energy swirling through the void. Leviathan was that chaos given form. Chaos isn't always evil. Sometimes it's just uncontrolled, like a river before it's channeled, like fire before it's contained. Powerful, but not yet directed toward purpose. But what happens when that kind of raw power gets corrupted? What happens when chaos becomes personal? That's where our story really begins. The ancient origins, from divine symbol to social destroyer. We have to journey back to the earliest civilizations of Mesopotamia, around 2000 BCE. The Babylonians told stories about Tiamat, massive goddess of chaos, who gave birth to terrible sea creatures. These weren't just random monster stories. They were trying to explain something profound. How do you create order out of chaos? In those ancient stories, Leviathan's predecessors represented the untamed forces of nature, the storms that could destroy crops, the floods that could wipe out cities. But here's the crucial insight. The same forces that could destroy could also create. Floods bring fertile soil, storms bring rain. It all depends on whether these forces are controlled or out of control. The Hebrew scriptures took this understanding further. In the book of Job, Leviathan appears as a creature of such magnificent terror that only God himself can control it. His scales are like shields that cannot be broken. His breath kindles coals. His very movement makes the deep boil like a pot. This isn't describing evil. This is describing raw power, terrifying power, but power that serves a purpose in God's creation. But then something changes. Psalm 74 and Isaiah 27 describe God eventually destroying this creature in the final judgment. These passages establish a crucial pattern. Leviathan represents something that starts as divine power but becomes corrupted into something that opposes divine order. And here's where it gets personal. The same chaotic forces Leviathan represented in creation myths were actively at work in human society, not through physical monsters, but through something far more insidious: envy. Here's where everything changes. The transformation of Leviathan from chaos monster to demon of envy begins with post-exilic Jewish writings. Jewish thinkers started to understand something terrifying. The same chaotic forces that threatened physical creation were also threatening human community. But why envy specifically? Here's the breakthrough insight. Envy operates like a primordial chaos force within human relationships. Just as Leviathan represented the untamed waters that could destroy the ordered world, envy represents the untamed emotions that can destroy ordered society. Think about how envy works. It starts with comparison. Someone else has something you want. That's natural. But then something shifts. The comparison becomes resentment. The resentment becomes obsession. And suddenly, you're not just unhappy about what someone else has, you actively want to destroy it. Medieval theologians assigned Leviathan specifically to the sin of envy. They recognized that envy had a unique capacity to destroy from within. Unlike other sins that primarily harm the individual, envy systematically corrupts relationships, communities, and entire civilizations. Here's what makes this so terrifying. Envy doesn't just attack individuals, it attacks the very concept of community itself. Where God intended differences to create beautiful complexity, envy creates bitter fragmentation. Medieval scholars didn't just study Leviathan as ancient history, they documented his influence as a present reality, and what they discovered was chilling. Unlike demons that attack individuals in isolation, Leviathan specializes in corrupting the relationships between people. He's not interested in making you sin alone. He wants to turn you against everyone around you. Here's his methodology. First, he identifies natural differences between people, different talents, different circumstances, different blessings. These differences aren't problems, they're actually part of God's design. Diversity creates interdependence. Your strengths support my weaknesses. Together, we're stronger. But Leviathan corrupts this beautiful system. He whispers that differences are unfair. He suggests that someone else's blessing is your loss. He plants the lie that life is a zero-sum game, where someone else's success necessarily means your failure. Medieval exorcists documented specific patterns in his attacks. He typically begins by drawing attention to inequalities between people. Normal awareness becomes bitter comparison. Healthy motivation becomes resentful obsession. Natural desire for improvement becomes destructive hatred of others' success. Here's where we reach the turning point. Leviathan doesn't simply inspire individual envy. He systematically destroys the very foundations of human society by making community impossible. Medieval theologians understood that Leviathan represents the anti-community principle. He's the force that transforms human society from cooperative endeavor into competitive warfare. Instead of we, he creates us versus them. Instead of celebration, he creates comparison. His methodology becomes clear when you look at how envy spreads through groups. He identifies the natural diversity within communities' differences in talent, blessing, circumstance, or achievement. Then he systematically corrupts these differences into sources of division. Where God intended diversity to create beautiful complexity, Leviathan creates bitter fragmentation. Where differences should build interdependence, he creates isolation. Where variety should spark creativity, he creates competition and conflict. Here's the most terrifying part. He doesn't want people to be simply envious. He wants society itself to be impossible. He wants community to be unthinkable. He wants cooperation to be naive, and competition to be the only logical approach to human relationships. Now we reach the climax of understanding just how devastating Leviathan's influence can be. His corruption operates through multiple forms of social destruction, each one designed to make human cooperation impossible. Comparative envy. This is where it starts. Leviathan whispers that others' success diminishes your worth, that life is a competition where someone else's blessing necessarily means less for you. His victims become unable to celebrate others' achievements. They find only pain in witnessing joy or success. Possessive envy. This goes deeper. Under Leviathan's influence, people become convinced that they deserve what others have. That fairness requires equal outcomes rather than equal opportunities. They begin to view others' possessions, relationships, or achievements as stolen goods that rightfully belong to them. Destructive envy. This is where it gets dangerous. Leviathan's victims don't simply want what others have. They want others to lose what they possess. If they cannot have success, love, or happiness, then no one should be allowed to experience these blessings. Social justice corruption. This is the most insidious form. Leviathan corrupts the legitimate desire for fairness and equality. He convinces his victims that inequality itself is evil, that any difference in outcome proves systematic injustice, that their envy is actually righteous anger. Under his influence, the pursuit of justice becomes indistinguishable from the expression of resentment. People become convinced that their bitterness toward others' success is actually moral superiority. Here's where ancient demonology becomes urgently relevant for today's world. Leviathan's methodologies haven't disappeared. They've found perfect expression in modern technology and social structures. Social media has created the most powerful comparison engine in human history. Instagram feeds full of other people's vacations and achievements. Facebook timelines showcasing everyone else's highlights while you're dealing with everyday struggles. You're comparing your real life to everyone else's highlight reel. Modern psychology has identified numerous patterns that align perfectly with ancient descriptions of Leviathan's influence. comparison addiction, resentment-based activism, victimhood competition, the growing inability of communities to celebrate individual success without feeling diminished. The rise of identity-based politics follows Leviathan's exact pattern. Take natural differences between groups and transform them into sources of grievance. Make every success by one group feel like a loss for another. Turn society into a competition between victims. Cancel culture operates the same way. Someone achieves success or recognition. Instead of celebration, there's investigation. Instead of inspiration, there's resentment. Instead of learning from their example, there's searching for reasons to tear them down. But here's the good news. Traditional religious texts provide clear guidance for protection against Leviathan's influence, and these principles work just as well today as they did thousands of years ago. The primary defense against Leviathan's corruption is cultivating gratitude, not just saying thank you occasionally, but developing a deep sense of abundance rather than scarcity. Understanding that one person's blessing doesn't diminish the availability of blessing for others. The Hebrew concept of shalom embodies this perfectly. It's not just peace, it's wholeness. The understanding that everyone's well-being contributes to everyone else's well-being. That your success actually makes success more possible for me, not less. Traditional spiritual practices like Thanksgiving, communal celebration, and service to others all serve to counter the scarcity mindset that makes envy possible. These practices reinforce the truth that abundance is real and that blessing multiplies when it's shared rather than hoarded. The biblical account of Cain and Abel provides the perfect template. Cain's murder of Abel wasn't random violence. It was the logical conclusion of envy allowed to grow unchecked. Cain couldn't celebrate his brother's success, so he destroyed it. But the story also reveals the antidote: acceptance of God's sovereign blessing and genuine celebration of others' success. As we reach the end of our exploration of Leviathan, we arrive at a crucial understanding. The transformation from chaos monster to demon of social destruction reveals something timeless about human nature. Our tendency to allow differences to become divisions and diversity to become discord. Whether you understand this as literal demonic influence or as a powerful metaphor for destructive social patterns, Leviathan represents one of humanity's most fundamental and dangerous temptations. In our age of social media comparison and identity-based division, the ancient warnings about the serpent of envy carry more relevance than ever before. The ultimate message isn't one of fear about human differences. It's about wisdom concerning their sacred purpose. Understanding Leviathan's influence provides insight into the spiritual dimensions of community, the difference between healthy awareness and destructive comparison. In a world that constantly measures, compares, and ranks human worth, the ancient wisdom about Leviathan offers a different way: the possibility of genuine community, celebration of others' success, relationships built on abundance rather than scarcity. You now understand the full story, from primordial chaos to social destruction, from divine symbol to community destroyer, from natural diversity to bitter division. The pattern has been revealed, the methodology exposed, the ancient warnings made clear. What will you choose? The poison of comparison that destroys community, or the practice of gratitude that builds it? The scarcity mindset that sees others' success as your loss, or the abundance understanding that celebrates blessing wherever it appears? The path of bitter envy, or the way of joyful community? But remember this: in choosing gratitude over envy, celebration over resentment, abundance over scarcity, you're not just making a personal decision. You're participating in a spiritual battle that has raged since the beginning of human community. The serpent of the sea still whispers his poison of comparison. He still offers the bitter satisfaction of resentment disguised as justice. But true community, grateful, celebratory, abundant community remains not just possible but powerful. It is, in fact, the only force capable of driving out the social corruption that Leviathan represents. Because here's the final truth: envy divides, but gratitude unites. Comparison creates competition, but celebration creates cooperation. Scarcity thinking makes community impossible, but abundance thinking makes it inevitable. The choice, as always, is yours to make.